Well, good evening. So glad we could meet tonight for dinner. I know most of you are here because of Brenna Grace Macleod, my new grandbaby, but we've got some other things to deal with. But thank you, Scott, good friend, and gosh, he's always so funny, but he can't think of anything funny. He thinks of me, so that's good. Hey, this video we've just seen, this is our world. This is a Vision 2020 God's Eye View. And the reason why this Pioneers video is so compelling is because it puts a face on these unreached people groups. They are currently out of reach of the gospel. 7 billion people make Earth their home. Of those 7 billion, 2 billion, 1 in 3, have no hope of ever hearing about Jesus Christ because they're in kind of a no-access zone. Doesn't mean that we can't walk there or get there in some way. They're in a no-access zone because only 1 in 30 missionaries ever get to the unreached people groups. They're like the ignored 2 billion. Only 1 cent out of $100 given to missions goes to the unreached. Guess what country has pledged to send 100,000 missionaries to the unreached peoples? It's not America, it's China. What country sends the most missionaries per 1,000 believers? Mongolia. Pretty amazing. There are over 50 unreached people groups in just Iran alone. We just mentioned that. In Iran is less than 1% Christian. And for Christianity to take root in a society, there has to be a gospel witness in the language and culture of that people. And according to the Joshua Project, and there's a slide here, 11 affinity groups of unreached people. If you look at that slide, okay, those numbers are in millions. These are the millions of unreached people groups in those parts of the world. And, wouldn't you agree that there is clearly a major task that we cannot ignore? While these stats are dismal, there are still fewer unreached people groups than there were, say, 15 years ago. 9/11 took place, and, it was a terrible thing, but it really woke up evangelical believers, people that love Jesus, to realize there's a great need in the Muslim world. And the past 20 years, more Muslims than ever before have come to Christ, and more workers serve in Muslim heartlands today, largely because of 9/11. This could be the beginning of what many may well become a flood of Muslims discovering Jesus Christ. And I feel like we need to mobilize workers into the Muslim world more than ever before. Amen? Mission Connection is connecting people with resources that can reach them. Give an example. Joanne McCurry sent us a note here. She said, our eldest son, Dan, attended Mission Connection last year and is in Lebanon in Egypt today, during a 6-month YWAM mission. She said he graduated from George Fox University last spring. God has touched his heart for Muslim people. He recently emailed me that Mission Connection is why he is in Lebanon today. Thank you. That's from a mother thanking us because their son is in Lebanon and in Egypt. Wow. What about poverty? According to UNICEF and their statistics, 22,000 children die every day because of poverty. There are 2.2 billion people, that's with a B, billion people in the world, and 1 billion of these children are in poverty. That's every second child. For many professionals with a passion for the Great Commission, it makes no sense to retrain them to work, for example, as a pastor, as an evangelist, when there are open doors and natural peer networks that already exist for lawyers, engineers, architects, medical personnel, and entrepreneurs to do something tangible to fight poverty and infectious diseases. Amen? Mission Connection is connecting people with resources that can reach these folks and touch them and bring healing into their lives. Listen to this story. Brian Wiggs. Brian Wiggs came to Christ in 2004. He attended Mission Connection in 2006, 2 years later. He got so excited, he went, I think, to the Bridge Ministry in downtown Portland. He started working in downtown Portland, got his whole family involved, and then had so much of that he left a very successful career as a GM mechanic. And he moved his family to work with the poor in Honduras in 2009 and helped teach them marketable skills. Brian is still there. Think about this. 2004, he comes to Christ. 2009, he's on the field. That's from birth to being mobilized through Mission ConneXion, a 5-year lifespan. I mean, that is amazing. That is the Lord that's doing this. There is an opportunity now to call Christians of all ages, youth, baby boomers, and the elderly, to the vision of fulfilling the Great Commission in our lifetime. And that opportunity is also right here at home. There is an influx of the world's peoples coming into the United States of America, and guess what? The world has learned English. You know what that means? Over 662,000 international students come to America each year, and they represent some of the most influential future leaders from their countries. And we can build relationships with them for the sake of Christ. The internet is a tool for evangelism, discipleship, fellowship, worship, training, and it's limited only by the creativity and the commitment of Christians. The possibilities are endless. This tool will shape the nature of the church and mission as we move into and through the 21st century. The missionary force in the world is now 50-50, divided between the global north and the global south missionaries from all sending nations. And we have opportunity to partner with the second and third world countries who are now sending out missionaries. Mission ConneXion is connecting people and resources to fulfill the Great Commission in our lifetime. Let's take, for example, Liz. She attended Mission ConneXion every year since 2005. She took the Perspectives course, and by the way, if you love missions and you've never taken the Perspectives on the World Christian Movement course, you need to do that. You need to get clued in. She took the Perspectives course twice. She served in Guatemala, El Salvador. Currently, she is completing her master's in applied linguistics and exegesis, preparing to work with Wycliffe Bible translators in Southeast Asia. Brenda Smith is a missions team member from Shoestring Valley Community Church in Onalaska, Washington. She wrote and she said, "You know, I really appreciate Mission ConneXion because of the fact that members of the church, teens through retirement age, can find a way to participate in the Great Commission that gives them specific ways to be involved in global outreach." Well, what has gone before? How did Mission ConneXion begin? How did we get here to this wonderful evening? Well, 1994, the Lord began to speak to me. I was working for the National Men's Movement Promise Keepers, and I was also serving part-time in my local church, Greater Portland Bible Church. And I got away to seek the Lord because both organizations were offering me full-time positions. So I was kind of saying, "Lord, do you want me to do men's ministry? Do you want me to do this missions thing?" Well, the Lord answered me by giving me a picture of climbing Mount Hood with a group. When I broke away from the group, I set up a bivouac on the downhill side of the mountain. And the picture was that as these men would come over the mountain and head down the downhill side, I was there with a bivouac, and I'm passing out knapsacks. And I'm saying, "Here, you go to the unreached people groups in Pakistan. Here, you go to the unreached Muslims in the Middle East. Here, you go to the unreached peoples in India." That was the picture the Lord gave me. I know He probably speaks to you with Bible verses and chapter and verse, but He has to speak to me with pictures. Go figure. So I chose the missions pastor role. For 5 years, God continued to nudge me, impressing on me that He wanted to use me to mobilize thousands into missionary service. Yeah, I know, I couldn't believe it either. I felt it was pretty far-fetched, and I pretty much kept it to myself. And then in January of 1999, George Verro, my good friend, the founder of Operation Mobilization, invited me to Missions Fest Vancouver, which is the largest missions conference in North America, 25 years young. I stood there. He was challenging young people. He had several thousand there. When he gave the invitation, almost like Luis Palau, all these students stood up to commit their lives in some way to missions. And at that point, it was like I was passing out. My peripheral vision just got focused like this. And I looked, and I felt this voice say to me, "What would it take to do this in Portland, Oregon. For the next 2 years, we began to build consensus amongst area mission pastors and church leaders, praying together for God to direct us if it was His will. In November of 2000, 20 leaders gathered at the Luis Palau offices to hear my vision. In April 2001, I remember approaching Kevin. I said, would Luis Palau be interested in helping us? He said, yes. And he agreed to help us rally the churches of Portland later in November in preparation for our first event, which would be January of 2002. Then September 11th happened. And if you remember, the economy went soft. It seemed like the worst possible time to be doing anything with churches. Certainly not anything having to do with missions, which sometimes can be the first thing to go when times get tough, unfortunately. But November 15th rolled around, and that was 1 day shy of 1 year from the time that we had met the Palau team to discuss these possibilities. 300 pastors gathered to hear about what was then called, we then called it Missions Fest Northwest, and I'll never forget Luis Palau, one of his proudest moments. He said, folks, the world has changed. Many would seek to destroy us, but Missions Fest Northwest exists to help your church prepare to take the gospel to those who hate us with the love of Jesus Christ. He hit a home run. We launched on January 18th, just a few weeks later, 2002, at New Hope Community Church, to a full house. One of our earliest slogans was 10,000 missionaries deployed from the Northwest churches every decade in the new millennium. We were crazy. What were we thinking? 10,000 missionaries deployed through Northwest churches in every decade of the new millennium. Mission Connection is connecting people and resources to fulfill the Great Commission in our lifetime. Brad Benson was a retiring Intel engineer. He came to Mission Connection in 2003. He talked with various mission agencies and exhibitors, and today he's serving as Director of Global Service Programs for Wycliffe Bible Translators. Well, what has God done in the last 10 years? Well over 1,000 churches have participated, allowing Mission Connection to continue to be a volunteer-led movement. Cumulative attendances, when you tally up all the aggregate yearly attendances, exceed 100,000. Over the years, we have welcomed the global-minded Christ followers from over 20 U.S. states, 2 Canadian provinces, and more than 6 countries. Over 200 different mission agencies have exhibited with us, and over 40 have exhibited for 5 years or more. We have probably touched every corner of the globe through the mission agencies represented with us over the years, providing opportunities in virtually every country around the globe. Our first event offered 80 workshops, and today we annually host over 125. That is over 1,000 workshops in a 10-year period. And if you figure on average is about 25 people in these workshops, then this represents over 25,000 individuals who have received specialized training through these unique sessions and the leaders that lead them. The Mission Connection brand or name has expanded to places like Fairbanks, Alaska, with Mission Connection Alaska in 2005. And Jeff Howe, where are you? Jeff, why don't you stand for just a second? Yeah, Jeff came all the way down to represent Mission Connection Alaska with us. We're glad you're here. And they get it, and we're so glad you're here, Jeff. Also, Mission Connection Inland Northwest in Spokane last September 2010. They launched, and we have also helped similar events like Missions Fest Seattle in 2006 get off the ground, and all these groups are still going.